thank you all for joining today. I see lots of familiar names in the group, so appreciate you spending us about 30 minutes with us. As many of you will have read recently, there was a pretty provocative, let's call it, article written a couple months ago, or published rather, by McKinsey, which I'm not going to say necessarily resurfaced, but certainly engaged the broader community around the conversation of how do we communicate productivity and efficiency with non-technical audiences, particularly the board or the C-suite. So that kind of is what brings us a little bit here today. I want to welcome George, who I'll introduce in just a moment. But today is really around having a conversation about, the challenges that engineering leaders face in terms of, picking a set of metrics that really drive meaningful outcomes in engineering, but at the same time, how do we cross that bridge of being able to communicate and evidence this journey to a naturally non-technical audience that has a different sense of outcomes that need to be achieved? And so it does call in the question of, how do we measure impact in R&D and engineering? And how do we communicate that? And how do we build cultures of continuous improvement within our engineering organization? So without further ado, I'll introduce George, who is the SVP of Engineering at GWI, which is one of our customers. George, do you want to maybe take a couple of minutes just to explain to folks a little bit about your background, a little bit about GWI, and we'll get started.
Great. Cool. Yeah, I'm George. So Senior Vice President of Engineering at GWI, which means I kind of oversee all engineering, QA, DevOps, business intelligence, and obviously software engineering. My background comes from corporate. So I was working for insurance firms, shipping firms, Morgan Stanley, and then I landed to GWI, which is the last 4.5 years of my life, which I really, really enjoyed. I'm usually based in Athens, currently in our New York office. And what we do at GWI, we building the world's largest study on digital consumers. We have surveys running in 53 markets, 2.8 billion consumers answering, 250K plus profiling points, 15K brands that we track. And, we're trying to deliver instant insights to everyone who wants to learn about their audiences or the brands they love.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Ed. So we're going to jump straight in. I'm going to ask you, there aren't going to be any easy questions today, but jump straight in. You've been working with us for a few years. How do you, today and also in the past, how do you define productivity? How do you think about productivity, and how do you measure productivity at GWI?
Yeah, cool. So it's been a journey. It's the pre-Plandek era and the after Plandek era. Obviously, I think that the challenge, we were always focused on team effort. Thank God, we never did the mistakes of measuring, individual efforts, and sometimes we might even gone bigger than the team level. So we follow a structure which is communities, and communities have squads, and squads are the multidisciplinary function of delivering a work. And we try to follow also team topologies wherever it makes sense. So the number one rule we had for productivity in general, along with product, was how fast can we deliver value and to the customer, which means we were always thinking about what are the problems we want to solve, what are all the alternatives, feasibility studies, what we want to deliver, how can we engage them early, and everything. And the way we were measuring our success was, in terms of more or less lead time through various tools that we were using, because designers were not in Jira, engineers were always in Jira. Some bits were in Confluence, some other bits in Google Docs, and this kind of things. And then as we were starting working with Plandek, we realized, we can put some structure, and we can start measuring a bit more into the squad level. So what does it mean for an engineer to be productive? How much context switching? What are the working types? What's CapEx versus OpEx? What's grow, experiment versus keeping the lights on or tech debt? This kind of stuff. And we're still evolving. We started getting a closer and deeper look into our DORA metrics, comparing ourselves against the industry or other big players. And that's where I think Plandek kind of rocks, because we started with the proposed templates, but it has the flexibility to do whatever you want. So then we created some structure. We used the templates because we had to go from completely nothing to something, and then we started creating boundaries. So, and we'll discuss maybe later how, on the different levels of the hierarchy and the different needs of each level, we can now have, and with the experience and the expertise and the help from you folks, have per team or per community something different, some flexibility, still towards the end goal. Still there is the golden set of metrics that we need to track. But it's good that you can have both, like a templated structure and a free form. So that was the journey. Like, we were always measuring value, and now we're starting into thinking more like, okay, that's the engineering part, that's a product part, whatever other discipline we want to measure, but we're still looking like our end goal is the ultimate epic lead time. You decided you need to work to something. How fast can you deliver it? What are the blockers?
And you mentioned, as you went through there, because you listed various things that you guys look at, and then I think, oversimplify it for a moment, but there are kind of two categories of things that you ran through. Things that are sort of more traditional R&D efficiency metrics, distribution of capital, how are we spending money on OpEx versus CapEx. Not many engineers that get motivated by how they're spending their time in an OpEx versus CapEx way. So and I think this is kind of at the crux of it, right? Because how do you bridge two various different worlds that recognize value in two fundamentally different ways, and yet ways that are so fundamentally intertwined? When you think about your conversations with your engineering communities, think about it at the community level even. What are the areas, I'm not going to say metrics at the moment because I don't necessarily think it's just about a metric, but what are the areas that have resonated the most with that team in terms of really driving adoption and understanding of how we work matters, and being more effective in how we work not only delivers value quickly, not only enables us to operate a little bit more efficiently, but ultimately creates a better environment for your engineers in terms of the kind of morale and satisfaction?
Well, it started with an alignment on why we need to measure some things for the business, which they all get it, as long as it was agreed that we can find an automated way that won't get into the ways of working of the engineering managers and their squads, so that my directors or associate directors could feel comfortable that we can measure these things without getting in the way. So that was the first part, and we managed to do that for most of the cases. But then we needed to discuss the differences between the layers. We needed to discuss that, let's see what we want to measure holistically, up until to the point that we do know, because I'm lucky enough to work with a very senior leadership team and very mature, and they've all been engineers in the past. They were never just managers. So they all get the pain, and they all get that developer experience matters and that productivity matters a lot. So we said, all right, let's assemble everything we know or we think it would matter. Let's understand who's the stakeholder, who do you need to show every metric, and for the rest, we'll let it to the teams. And I think that's where the biggest challenge is, to the engineering manager level and below, to get that buy-in, and we can discuss the challenges in there and how you can get them on board. So that was the easy part with my direct level on the community leadership level, to get an alignment and an agreement, because they just get it. And I was lucky enough. But I think, even if you don't have such a senior leadership team, just being honest, transparent, and clear that there are things that we need to do for the business sake that make sense, and that it's a good thing that they're asking. Listen, I've been a CTO before, and you were in the room, and I was like, okay, The CFO had to come with all the data. The CMO had to come with all the data, explain deadlines, whatever. And, you know, I was getting away with, all right, we'll deliver that probably by the end of Q2. Nobody was really asking back then, like, you know, where are all the investments going? What are the bottlenecks? Are your engineers happy? Do they work effectively? Do they collaborate effectively with the other disciplines? It was like, all right, we're going to deliver it. We cannot measure these guys. They're doing their mod, so we don't really know what's going on. I think it's a good thing that we all have to conform to the habit of measuring and trying to unblock our people and scale them, allowing them to do more in the same time with better tooling and better processes. So that's how it went with the leadership level and communities.
In line with that, you know, is your, to share with the folks here, I guess, is what are your common metrics that you're using today? I guess two-part question. What are you using right now to socialize with your board? And talk a little bit about the journey that you've had to take them on in terms of, you can ask the questions, now you get the answer, but we need to kind of take you a little bit on a journey. So whether it's the DORA metrics, which I know you guys use quite prolifically, but also there are a number of other things that you use. Talk a little bit about what do you socialize with your board? How do you explain how this metric, which on the surface doesn't make a lot of sense, is fundamental and meaningful to how we deliver value in technology?
So as you said, we started with the DORA metrics. I think the biggest buy-in for the executive leadership or a board meeting is that these are industry standards. That's how you get the immediate buy-in, and you have something to compare to. Maybe you don't have all the data to compare against your size or your industry, but you have at least something you can compare to. Now, to be honest, I don't think you always get everything, like all the details, like why cycle time matters, but they definitely get, you know, mean time to recover, for example, or, you know, how many incidents you had and all this kind of stuff. And we all agree why stability matters and why continuity matters, because there's no chaos, there's no context switching, there's nothing like that. So when everything works smoothly. And then I had to be honest that, you know, these are measuring just engineering. So going back to our original principle, how we started this talk, is like we need to prove value, and value doesn't come only from engineering, right? It's a multidisciplinary effort. So we said, all right, let's look into what would make sense first in the community leadership level in terms of how do we deliver work. So there are a couple of things that we measure with the folks, like, you know, P1 bugs, time resolution for P1 bugs versus P2 or P3, you know, cycle time, obviously, which is something different from the lead time to changes, but could be a candidate for surfacing above instead of the lead time for changes. Epic lead time, which is the biggest struggle to persuade all the disciplines to work in the common tools so that you can have an accurate measurement. Work type investments. So we decided on the work type investments that make sense and how we can split them, and sprint target completion, which is one of the biggest struggle in order to get alignment with everyone, that why it matters to complete the work you promised you're going to complete, and not completing, you know, even 100 more tickets, but not the ones you promised, not the ones that you had at the beginning of your sprint. From these kind of metrics, we landed on sprint target completion, like how good we are at estimating and delivering on promise. So how predictable we can be on delivery, and obviously the epic lead time, like from the moment we decide we're going to work on something, how fast we can work. And, you know, we're contemplating, we're still discussing. As I said, I think maybe cycle time is a bit more relevant instead of the, you know, lead time for changes. Like measure actually the ticket moving from in progress to done, meaning deployed to production, instead from the first pull request, which mainly measures your CI/CD pipelines and your effectiveness in there. I'm not saying we want to measure both, but like maybe contemplate again what needs to be surfaced. And that's a continuous discussion that happens with the leadership team. But now we're pretty locked, like 2 metrics for the flow, and we're also considering other flow metrics and the DORA metrics for the board. For the rest, you know, it's as I told you, bug resolutions, work type investments. Work type investment, for example, I have these discussions with our CFO a lot of the time. Like, why don't we spend more a bit on experimentation with just growing existing features or new features? Why do we have, much or no tech debt, which is also always suspicious, like things like that.
What is a lot of the focus that we've talked about, I mean, is very much kind of in that solution development space, right? It's not so much sort of roadmap, product strategy, much more the solution design. When you think about the outcome, right, the business outcome that you enable, your big technology stack, I mean, you are at the core a technology business, right? Despite the fact that there's content and products and so on and so forth, I mean, at the core, you are a very large technology business. What has been your experience to date in terms of trying to really, if we go back to that McKinsey article, the responses by Beck and Gerge have been very much around identifying the impact and trying to correlate those two with the impact. What is and I guess for folks who haven't read those articles, we do have links in the sign up for this, so you can go back and reread it. But I guess, George, maybe for those who haven't read it, give us a quick synopsis in your mind of, what is the difference between impact versus delivery? And thank you, Michael, even better. What is, how would you summarize it for the audience, but then actually bring that into real life context? How do you evidence impact and value creation?
Just to my 2 cents on the McKinsey report, I think the main criticism, which I agree with, is that they focused a lot on the effort. So if we and mainly on the individual effort, like how can you scale a person? But that doesn't really, I don't know if it works on any other discipline actually, but definitely doesn't work when you try to deliver through a multidisciplinary team. It doesn't mean nothing. Because you don't do anything alone. Your pull request has to be reviewed by someone. You probably would need to pair programming. Your front ends are dependent on your back. Like, it means literally nothing. Now, I'm pretty much engaged and really resonated with a mental map that Gegerly and Kent Beck proposed. So that circle of effort, output, outcome, and impact. I kind of disagree with how they laid out DORA metrics on that mental map. I think I would put everything like a step back. Like, I consider deployment frequency, lead time, mean time to recover as an output, and the outcome is a change failure rate, which the impact would be happy clients, a stable service. So that's how, and I think we had that discussion. As I said, again, I cannot thank enough the leadership team that I have, because they always engage in these kind of discussions, and they always seem to get it, and they're trying to be into these discussions and try to find things. So we did that map. We shifted everything back once, and for us, in terms of the impact, is stability, discoverability of for our specific platform, of our data, speed to insights. So because as GWI, you need to understand, we serve like from the research specialist to the person that just wants to find 2 interesting data points from an audience to go on a pitch in 10 minutes. So what's the impact? What's the value that we bring to all these people? Have they increased their ROI? That's an impact. Have they created more pitches? That's an impact. Did they land 90% of these pitches due to our data? That's the impact. And that's a difficult but very interesting discussion you need to do with the engineering. That the fact that your code being deployed to production, which is your artifact as an engineer, don't get me wrong. The artifact of an engineer should be to build something with code that can be deployed to production, but that's not the end. And we have a very an excellent actually synergy with the product team, which they also do get it that it's a collective effort. It's not like it's not the usual split you'll find in other industries, which is they do the why and what, and we'll tell them how and when. We're all connected on every part. And it's a struggle to reach that down to every engineer. It's a struggle to make everyone care. You wouldn't, not I'll have to be honest, not everybody will care. And you need all the people you can find, as long as they're good engineers and good people, which matters a bit more for me, to be there. And for those that want to see the whole thing, we need to cater, and we need to have the dashboards and the tools like Plandek and the synergies with all the other tools that we're using. For the people that just don't want to be a part of it, if they're not blocking it, I'm fine. But I think we will get everyone on board.
There's been a lot of talk about this, going back even way before McKinsey. And you alluded to it earlier, and I wanted to hear your experiences on this point, which is there are, a set of metrics which, ideally the board would like to see, a set of things which evidence value, outcome, impact, try to bring some logical, let's say, attribution of how what we're doing here drives direct value here. And that can be quite difficult. At the same time, a lot of those metrics are not going to resonate with a engineering audience, right?
Correct.
What has been, I guess, Andrew, part of its experience, what is your view? Because I think a lot of people are split on this. Some people think that actually you should align everyone on the same set of metrics, right? The board, all the way down to the engineering team, should all be focused on the same set of metrics, so that as we're optimizing, we're all optimizing and pulling in the same direction. Others say, actually, you want this, so I'll give you these set of metrics, but actually over here, we're working on things. And obviously the risk is that this may not optimize that, right? It may not, depending on what they are. What's been your experience? And I guess, where's your thinking at the moment in terms of your view on, is it more beneficial to have direct alignment between what you're socializing with the board, what you're communicating to the broader business, and what your teams are focused on? Or no, actually not?
I believe you cannot align everyone. I think, I'd like to hear someone that made it, and maybe we can all learn something. But I think how we roll in GWI, it's like engineering managers need to understand how to run their teams better. So their focus needs to be completely different from the view I want, because I'm not in the ground anymore. I'm not hitting my keyboard to write code. I'm hitting my keyboard to jump into meetings most of the time, or spreadsheets and check budgets. So I need something different. And I think that's where the director level, the people that sit within these teams, and the executive or the senior leadership level need to be able to say, right, these are the metrics that we're going to agree are going to help the engineering managers run the teams faster, better, whatever that means. It might not be always faster. These can aggregate to things that we can give to George, and then George, from these, along with some metrics, can go back and report on the things that matter. So, and as I said, some of these things, yes, you might see epics or tickets have labels that are related to metrics that are completely maybe agnostic to the teams. Like, what is a work type? Why do we think of CapEx or OpEx? Definitely someone needs to put that label, so you need to understand, but I'm not expecting our junior engineer to get it right away. The good thing, though, is to be transparent. So to talk about, these are the metrics we're reporting. There is a danger of gamifying them, and people thinking it's more important or too important than it actually is. So that's, again, a communication thing. But I think you need to be upfront and honest. That's everything we measure. These are for you. Focus on that. Tell us what you think. What are your blockers? We'll collate information, make it more digestible, and we might actually get some first level information from you as you work in order to report that too, because we can tell a nice story, because it's all about storytelling. It's the impact. I rarely would surface something about the effort. but like outcome outcome, outputs, impact, it makes sense for some of them to be surfaced. But I don't think everyone should care about what's our percentages versus capex or opex, George, like what's coming on, or like having my principal engineer asking like, how was it last quarter? Was it good? Because it shouldn't matter. That matters for me and my VP and the VP of product or the VP of data science. Have we aligned on the right strategy? Have we chosen to fight the right battles? Are we moving towards the right goal? And at the same time, I shouldn't be cared about, what's your, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know, but like rework rate, refactor rate, capacity accuracy, planning accuracy, all these things, they should matter for the people that run on the ground, that they run the floor. Yeah. I can judge and we can comment on the blockers and help unblock people. That's my role. But that shouldn't be going into live view from Plandek on every squad and check what's going on. That's not my role. I hate it. I would never do it. I heavily detest micromanagement. So, and that's why I don't want them to care about other things. I want them to be focused, running their teams to the best they can.
I had a follow on to that, but there's a couple of questions in the Q&A, which I'll get to first. We've got a couple of minutes left, so we might run. The first one is, share more details of how you define the flow metrics as well as DORA. I mean, I think those are kind of predefined, but I think the key bit here is, what are some of the lessons learned from your experience with different flow metrics, DORA metrics, when rolling it out to the organization, so to your teams, to enable insights and impact the metrics provided?
Excellent question. So yeah, I mean, epic lead time is the lead time for an epic. So the moment the epic gets created until it gets deployed to production, sprint target completion, it's a pretty standard. Also, like you said, you're going to do 10 things at the beginning of the sprint. How many of these 10 and only these 10 things have you really deployed? And let's not get into we can send the latest report maybe to the audience. So the impact of rolling them out, I think, people are resistant to change. That's for sure. So it's another change management, more or less, exercise. The initial reaction always is why do we measure that? Is there something going wrong with my work or with my role? And then they'll try to game them. So the way we did it here in GWI is we aligned with the VP of product and the CPO to say that, listen, that's just for you initially to gain some awareness. All we want you to know is how you work. And let us, tell us what you think about it. If you think that does justice to your work, if you think the hygiene of your Jira is enough, if you think it's not a garbage in, a garbage out, but it's, it's a really messy situation that we need to, cater for and dig in and unblock things. So for me, the initial challenge was, listen, we won't do anything. We want you to see it and come back and tell us what you think. And I think that helped a lot of people get away from, all right, there's something going on. Probably I need to game them. And obviously you'll have people thinking, but it's not agile to not be able to deliver whatever I want during a sprint, no matter what I promised. And then you have to do these discussions, like, how do we do agile? What do we mean by these agile ways of working? What's the way we like it in GWI? What's our flavor? We don't go by any agile gospel or whatever here, or Kanban. We don't do that in GWI. So it fostered a very productive discussion. I think we haven't solved everything, if I have to be honest, but we're pretty much clear on what we need to measure on a certain level and above. And we're still working on what's really effective, what makes sense for the teams, and how to engage everyone. And, sometimes coaching can help. You can bring an agile coach, we can bring you to do a session like these but I'm not joking, like these kind of things from the people that are experts and work a lot into these fields, and they have the subject matter expertise, and they're a bit more opinionated. and cannot be easily challenged, or they have the answers when they are, it helps. We're contemplating over these things too.
I'd be delighted to. One last question. I think this is a good transition into it. Walid mentioned about how, in your mind, in your experience, how does the team size affect the type of metrics that you've chosen at a team level versus, individual productivity?
That's a good question. I think, yeah, we've never taken the team size into account, to be completely honest. Maybe organically it's taken into account from that leader over there, or the tech lead or the engineering manager, because I can see where that comes from. If you have a 2-month squad or a team, definitely PRs might be a blocker, or like not having a designer might be a blocker, or whatever. But again, I think it's good to surface these things. Maybe you need to add some metrics, but using the same one, I would use the same ones, because I need to know, all right, that's a 2 months team. If the velocity or the time to value or the lead time is not enough, we're gonna look at PR times or cycle time. Probably they're inflated because of the fact that they're 2-person. Do we accept that? It's like doing a security report. Like, would you change your security standards based on if you're a 10-people firm or a 100-people firm? No, but you'll accept different risks. When you cannot afford in a 10-people firm to buy the latest firewall or the best security software, and that's actually a real example. We were never doing SAST analysis before in our tooling. After a point, we started working, with Dependabot and Sneak and using other tools. Like, there are risks and options all the time and trade-offs. So, but you need to know them. We never stopped even when we weren't doing much, we never stopped doing, security lessons or education or penetration tests. It's just, different risk level of different acceptance of the various risk levels. That's what changes.
Because I think that's practicality, right? And I think there's something even within that we can think about with, it's not even sometimes the size of the team, but it's understanding the dynamics of the team, whether that's driven by size, technology, competency, capability, whatever it might be, that changes the dynamics and the struggles of each team. And it's having an awareness of that and being able to pivot away, having some standard things that we look at as a group, but also encouraging the nuances of what challenges some teams versus others. And I think that's really kind of at the core of what we're trying to promote. Conscious, it's
and if I may,
please.
So just to add one thing on that, don't forget we're talking about humans. Companies are made of humans. Engineering teams are made of humans. There are gonna be intricacies. Things are gonna flow differently, organically, either by the tech, as you said, or by the characters, or by the team and human dynamics. Mm-hmm. And there is that thing that you need them to surface. You need to understand, and you need to show empathy and get closer and uncover. And the last thing I would like to say is, like, all these metrics, and depending on these quotes, we don't use them because I've heard that sometimes, for comparisons. It's just to tell a story. You never should compare a squad to another, a community to another. They're not doing the same thing. If they were, they would work on the same team. So they're not doing the same thing. They're not building the same services. They don't offer the same value. They're in different teams, in different communities for a reason. So all we need is a story for whoever. So the story changes sometimes depending on who you want to talk to. But for me, the main thing is to help the leaders of the business understand, where their money goes into, great, and if there are any blockers, how we can help as leaders, and if we want to invest more or less, and why. These are the high-level things. The lower-level things is unblocking. Use me or the superpowers of my leadership team to really unblock things. I don't know, buy a software, hire more people, reform the teams, create a developer experience or an enablement team, these kind of things. So there is always a top-down approach, but can be really directed the opposite way.
Well, that's a perfect way to close today. So I will let you run because I know you need to run to the airport pretty soon before you make your
Thanks a
flight.
lot.
Thank you very much for the time today, and thanks for everyone who joined us. Again, we'll make this available on the page if you want to share it with anybody, or if there's anything in today's call that you missed. But yeah, thank you again so much, George. Appreciate it, and look forward to chatting with you soon.
It's been a pleasure, Will. Thanks a lot.
Cheers,
and thanks, everyone. Bye.